Who is Brine? What does she do? Why should you know her? And is she single? Step into my office and we'll find out. Welcome to My Man Cooks. We're going to go over the basics of brine, how to, why you should do it, what it does, and the way I do it, and some things to add into it to help get the flavor that you want out of your meat. Here's some of our ingredients that we have. So we have our salt, sugar, and our coriander, a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, a little bit of white wine vinegar, some white wine. I have one whole lime chopped into eighths, an orange chopped into eighths, an onion, a small onion chopped into eighths, some dill, some thyme, a lemon chopped into eighths, 2 bay leaves, some crystallized ginger. I prefer using fresh ginger, but this is what I had at the time. And I crushed a little bit of garlic. So we're going to use that. Now, a brine, it's basically a saltwater solution that helps with your meat, tenderizing it and also imparting moisture into the meat. Whenever you buy a whole chicken, they put some sort of solution into it. So this is going to help take out what they put in it and put in what you want into your meat. So a brine, again, it's a salt solution. And the basic rule of thumb is that you want 1 tablespoon of salt for every quart of water. So that's a basic rule of thumb. You can change it up a little bit depending on the salinity that you want in your chicken. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically follow that, but we're going to do it in a different way. And I'm also going to throw some sugar in there. Sugar helps absorb and replace things, but it also helps when you cook it to help the caramelization process on the skin. So it'll give you some crispy skin, things like that. So one of the ways that I'm going to help impart sugar on it is I have some cane sugar. But what you can also use is brown sugar, which has molasses in it. You can also use just molasses if you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring our water up to a boil, and we're going to first put in our salt and our sugar, and we're going to whisk it until it's fully dissolved. And I'll meet you back when we start putting stuff in. All right, so we have added our salt and our sugar. We are whisking this so that it absorbs. A better measurement than tablespoons would be by weight, like grams or milligrams, because not all salts are created equal. So I'm using kosher salt. If you use a table salt or something like that, it could weigh more than the kosher salt. So be mindful of what salt you're using. If you're going the tablespoon route, that's fine. Just keep in mind, if you're using something like a table salt, it's going to weigh more. Kosher salt, it takes more to get the same weight. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So we're whisking this. Our salt and our sugar has now been fully absorbed into our water. And I'm going to go with the liquid ingredients first. The first one is about 1/3 of a glass of white wine. What you add to your brine is totally up to you. It depends on what you want your chicken to taste like, okay? I'm going with roughly a tablespoon of white wine vinegar, teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, and about 1.5 teaspoons of coriander seeds. If you didn't know, coriander is cilantro. Throw that stuff in there. I'm gonna go with our herbs now. I have 1.5 sprigs of dill and a few sprigs of thyme. I have my onion. Go with my lemon, my orange, my lime, my 2 bay leaves, my ginger. Ooh, almost lost one little guy there. I want all the flavor. Get in there. And our garlic. I like garlic. I like it on chicken, just about anything. So I'm going to add that. What you put in your brine is up to you, but you want the basic components there, a salt and a sugar, depending on how you want your meat to caramelize and how you want the things to get the caramelization process and the crispiness of the skin. If you like crispy skin, you're going to probably want some sugar in there. I'm also getting natural sugars out of the citrus that's in there. It's also going to add kind of like a citrus kick to my chicken. So we're going to bring this to a boil, let the juices from the fruit, the citrus specifically, and the onion and everything like that get incorporated into our water. Then we have to cool it down. You never want to brine anything with hot liquid, okay? When you brine something, you want it to be on the colder side, a little bit closer from right in between refrigerator and room temperature. All right, we're up to a boil now. We're gonna let this sit, stir it occasionally. I don't know if I mentioned in the beginning, I started off with roughly 3 quarts of water, which is why I use 3 tablespoons of salt. Remember the 1 quart to 1 tablespoon of salt ratio that we want to maintain. Again, be mindful of the salt that you're using. If you're using a different salt other than, say, kosher salt, do it in grams if you have a kitchen scale or something like that. So we're going to let this go for a little bit, and once everything's fully incorporated and all the juice comes out of the citrus and everything, I'll meet you back and I'll show you how we're going to cool this down. We're back. So everything is getting incorporated in here. I'm going to take this off of the heat. Now, we'll let it sit off of the heat. We need to cool this down so that we can put our chicken in it. Because we don't want to cook the chicken with our brine. We want everything to be basically just below room temperature and right around the refrigerator range. So I have some stock, some chicken stock from our stock video. I have put it in an ice cube tray and frozen it. That's one of the ways we're going to go ahead and help cool this down. Now keep in mind that raises the amount of water or liquid in your brine. So the other thing I've got here is I have a mason jar that was also put in the freezer with stock in it, and I'm going to gently coax this guy out of his home. You can let this sit out for a couple of minutes. You can also, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scoop some of the hot brine in there, swirl it around so that it comes away from the edges a little bit. Alright, so we've coaxed this guy to come out a little bit. This is more stock that I have just kind of frozen in a mason jar. I'm going to gently set that in there so I don't die of boiling, splashing brine. And we're going to stir this up. And once our frozen guys of stock get fully melted and everything like that, we'll check the temperature. And I've got another trick that I'm going to show you that I use to help bring it into like a refrigerative temperature state. Alright, so we added our ice cube stock and our ice block stock. Let's say your temperature still isn't where you want it to be. I often use beer in my cooking. So I'm going to add a cold beer to help bring the temperature down a little bit. While our brine is cooling down, I'm going to start prepping our chicken. I'm going to show you one of my favorite ways to prepare it, and that's called the spatchcock. And I have no idea where the name comes from. If you know, let me know down in the comments. But this is how I'm going to do it. So we have our whole chicken here, whole bird. Got the backbone. I don't want the backbone in there. So I can cook the chicken more evenly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. And and I'm going to cut along that one side. I'm going to make sure I keep this part right here. That is known as the oyster of the thigh. Think of kind of like the small of your back. Now, I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Get a little bit started. So I get my knife in there. Be careful when you do this, okay? Sometimes it takes a little bit more pressure than what we're used to doing with food. And it can be a bit touchy to get down into certain spots. But I have spatchcocked it, and we got some a little of this extra skin. I'm going to cut that off. This is going to be for stock. Save it for stock, okay? We got a couple little bit pieces of extra skin here. We're gonna put that aside as well for stock. Clean it up a little bit so it doesn't look so gross. Now, the whole object of this is I want to lay it flat. So it's already basically been done for me, but I want to cut this right here so that when I am roasting it, everything lays flat, right? It will cook more evenly that way. The breast and the thighs are basically at the same height, as opposed to it being a whole chicken. You got to worry about rotating it and the bottom getting soggy and everything like that. This way, you don't have to worry about that. Again, spatchcock. Let me know what you guys think. So our brine has cooled down, and it's time to place our chicken in. And I do it a very specific way. So I pick my chicken up. As you can see, pay particular attention to the color of the skin and the meat and everything like that. So when I put it in so that it kind of just slides down in there. Now, if it doesn't stay underneath, and I'm just going to kind of move some stuff over top of it, right? If it doesn't stay underneath, you can take a ceramic plate, put it on top so that it stays submerged. You want it to stay submerged. Now, if I have something small, I will only brine it for about an hour. If I'm doing like a whole chicken or a whole pork loin or something like that, I'm going to brine it for about an hour a pound. With poultry, that gets a bit tricky because if you brine something for more than 12 hours, sometimes it'll get soggy. So don't necessarily follow that rule. My rule is any time spent in a brine is better than none. So if you have an hour, throw your chicken in for an hour. It's better than not brining it at all, in my opinion. So we're going to put this, make sure this stays cool. If we have to throw some ice cubes on top, fine. If we have to throw it in the fridge, fine. But we want it to stay basically cool. And then we're going to take it out of the brine. This is it for part one of brine and the chicken. Stay tuned, because coming soon is part two, where I'm going to show you guys how I cook the chicken, and we're going to incorporate some compound butter. It's going to be legit. So make sure you come back. Thank you very much for joining me in my kitchen. I appreciate it. Take care, guys.